All right. Well, we have got a good group here today. Welcome. I'm Bruce Carlson. I'm with the ARP Fraud Watch Network, and every month on the third Friday of the month, we do an educational and interactive Zoom presentation. So as we said in the promotion, if you have a question on any fraud topic, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. But our topic today, got one more person, is scams relating to your home. And
Yeah.
with me, as always, is Kay Tomlinson, who's going to be doing a presentation on title fraud, deed fraud, and then we've also got Suzi Beerman with us, who experienced a a scam relating to a kitchen remodel, but it's quite a bit more than that.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Kay, and if you want to take us away.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Welcome, Susie. Thanks for joining us this morning. And welcome to all of you as well. Great to see our newcomers and then so many of you who have joined us in the past. So, homeowners fraud. We know that there are many, many types of scams that can impact not just your current, but also your future home ownership. So today I want to talk a little bit about just two specific types of scams that you might not be as familiar with because both can affect both your assets as well as your finances. Title fraud and wire transfer fraud. Now, you might not have been expecting these, but one is very common and the other is not nearly as common as we might think. So let's dive in. First, title fraud has been in the news, and you've probably all heard about the attempted Graceland ownership takeover. And AARP has been asked about this as well. It sounds very scary, but how much of a threat is title fraud to our home or property ownership, really? Well, home title theft, also known as, let's see, deed theft, deed fraud, mortgage fraud. This happens when a criminal impersonates a property or a homeowner and then sells or mortgages the property. It's a type of identity theft. When the criminals register the title change or the sale at the county recorder's office, they're going to employ several ways to make that happen. They're going to use fake identification, a counterfeit notary signature, and they're going to take ownership of the property by changing the title. And they can make money from a forged deed in several ways, including illegally renting out the property, opening a home equity line of credit or a HELOC, or they might refinance the mortgage to cash out the equity, and they might even sell the home or the property. So according to the experts and also title companies that I've talked with locally, the targets of these title thefts are most often vacant properties, raw land, or empty rental properties. One title company that I talked to told me that they've actually changed their processes and policies when working with vacant land to conclusively, personally identify the actual owners to prevent fraud. And in one instance of fraud that they discovered during their process, the person that was trying to change the title of a local property and owner, that person was actually located in Iceland, a fraud. So these types of scams actually kind of first came to light and were first announced back in 2008, a while ago. And though home title theft is on the rise in recent years, it's still quite uncommon. According to the FBI's 2023 Internet Crime Report, there were about 9,500 complaints that year for real estate fraud. Losses were about $145 million. Okay, that's not insignificant, but it's down from the nearly 12,000 complaints the previous year. And I think we need to understand those numbers include all types of real estate fraud. not just title fraud. They don't even break that out. So even though this might be an uncommon crime compared to what we usually talk about here at Fraud Watch Friday, how would you even know if you're the victim of a deed theft? Well, you might stop receiving your bills relating to your property, like utilities, water, property tax assessments. You might stop receiving your tenants' rent payments and then find out they've been sending them faithfully, but to somebody else at another address. Or you might be notified that you're now in default of a loan that you never even knew that you had. So, yeah, this might not be common, but it sounds pretty scary to me. So what are some steps you can take to be aware of this and help yourself? Well, first, pay attention to that snail mail that you're getting. Sign up for informed delivery at the US Postal Service so you know what's coming, and don't just toss that mail that you think is advertisements. Take a couple minutes and look at it to make sure it's not something you advising of something that's not quite right. And take a few minutes as well to check your property deed and then monitor it to make sure that there aren't any unexpected changes. These are public records available for everyone to see. And you can find your deed information online. If you have a mortgage, you're free and clear, HELOC, whatever. Do a search in your browser using the county name, regardless of where you're at, county name, state, and then the words recorded document search. You're just going to enter your first and last name, and it's going to pull up everything for you to look at. In some of these counties, you can set up a notification that's going to alert you if there are any changes to your title. Or, as one local title company called me, just call a title company like every quarter or so, every 6 months, and whether it's your title company or not, and see if there's been any changes to your title. It's easy for them to look it up, and they're going to be more than happy to help you. And so what do we always say at Fraud Watch Friday? Freeze your credit and monitor your credit reports for identity theft. And of course, you get a free credit report from all three agencies, annualcreditreport.com. And, when you're checking your title, check to see if you have a title insurance policy. We have one. I didn't even know until I talked to a title company. Specifically check if there's an owner's title policy attached to your deed. And so this is different than your mortgage title policy that insures your loan if you have one. And it's typical that this is part of an original title package anytime that you buy or refinance. It's been so many years ago, I didn't even know. This is going to usually help protect you against impersonation and theft. And again, any title company that you call are going to be more than happy to help you with this. Don't bother with title monitoring services. There are several companies out there that advertise, print and TV, that say they're going to monitor your home's deed 24/7 to prevent fraud. These are expensive. Don't buy it. They monitor your title just like you would do. They don't prevent anything. FTC recently actually issued a warning about these companies. They're basically bogus. And as always, protect your information. So bottom line, title theft is scary because our homes are typically our biggest asset. But this is not as common a fraud as some companies and some news organizations would make you believe. The basic protections that we always talk about each month: freeze your credit, be aware of phishing, strong passwords, updated security software. It's going to go a long way to protect you from this fraud. So that's great, but I'm going to pivot to a much, much more common fraud, which is wire transfer fraud. And it's associated not just with real estate and construction, but with many other frauds and financial transactions in general. So I was talking recently with the mortgage director for KeyBank. And he says they see many attempts at wire transfer fraud, something they see much more frequently than title fraud. He's never even seen a case of title fraud in his 15 plus years at the bank. So, wire transfer fraud is a type of cybercrime where criminals trick people into sending money to the wrong account. And typically they use a phishing email. And in terms of real estate, they can pretend to be your realtor, a contractor, and they give instructions to have payments sent into a fraudster's account. And we need to realize not only are these scammers criminals, but they're very, very sophisticated. And they use phishing emails and texts. They look authentic. They contain instructions and websites that look real. And they might even contain personal information that only someone you know or someone you're working with would have. They're very sophisticated. So how would we avoid these scams or even try to avoid these scams? Well, sometimes it's pretty hard to even avoid wire transfers. I mean, it's a fast and easy way to send money to an account for individuals and for businesses. It's a matter of course for business. So what should we be aware of? Well, first we need to remember that wire transfers are like sending cash. And unfortunately, once that money's sent, it typically can't be reversed. And to be aware of some of the warning signs, what might seem strange. Of course, if you get an unexpected appeal for a money transfer by wire, you're going to be cautious. We always say verify, don't just trust. And beware of any last minute changes to real estate wire instructions that you've already received. And homeowners that are in process of closing on a property purchase can especially be a target for this scam. If there's any changes to a wire request, contact the financial institutions by phone using the number that's not listed on the email request, a verified number. According to KeyBank, they don't even send wires instructions or especially changes to wire instructions anymore by email in order to avoid these phishing attacks. And like we always say with any scam, don't be rushed to send money right away. Go slow. Closely inspect and verify the transfer instructions that come with your wire transfer request. And if you're being asked to ask immediately, do just the opposite. You don't have to do what they say. Go slow. And especially, maybe most important, always try to double check and confirm the intended recipient. This can be difficult because, as I said, these scammers are sophisticated. Contact your mortgage consultant, title company, business partner, whoever you're dealing with by calling their official published phone number or a personal number that you know is correct. And finally, if you have any doubts at all, just stop and get help. Ask for assistance, just like your doctor. Get a second opinion. Talk to your bank or another trusted financial advisor to validate the legitimacy of the request. So, title theft, well, it's not a very common form of identity theft. It can be devastating, and it can require going to court with an attorney in order to restore your ownership rights for your home and property. Wire transfer fraud, as we've seen, is much more expansive, much more expensive, whether it involves real estate or a general transaction. And with the use of phishing emails and spoofing of phone numbers, it's much, much more difficult to detect. And so that brings us to our special guest today, Suzi Beerman, whose firsthand experience with phishing and wire transfer fraud is not only instructive for all of us, but Suzi, it's heartbreaking as well. Suzi, thank you for joining us so much and be willing to share your story.
Well, thank you, Kay, and also thank you, Bruce, for having me. Um, I would love to tell you about this. I wish I didn't have this story to tell. Um, it's been a year since this happened to us, and we have not gotten the money back. There has been almost no like help for us. So I'm here because I really want to make sure that you guys understand how easily this can happen. I get phishing emails all the time. I get random text messages from people that want to be my friend all the time. And I think a lot of us are pretty smart, we're pretty onto that. And we feel good, like, hey, I'm protected. Okay, my credit is frozen. I've done all the things,
Yeah.
but we were in the middle of a kitchen remodel, a major remodel. All the new cabinetry, all the new appliances, 3 walls taken out. It was a long process, and we were at the halfway point in the process when we needed to pay for cabinet and countertop delivery to the tune of $61,000. We were not available to walk that check in the front door of the Arizona Designs Kitchen and Bath Company to give them the check. So we had to do a wire transfer. I thought, wire transfer, that's like everybody does that, right? And the banks, they're experts on this. This business knows what they're doing. So wire transfer it is. Beep, bop, boop, let's get it going. So I contacted, because we're retired, I contacted our wealth managers and said, we're going to need this money on this date. They were like, fine, we'll get it all ready for you. They got it all ready. In the meantime, I asked the designers for an invoice and for their account numbers. And the designer decided that it was a good idea to send me an email via her iPhone with the account information in it. And at that point is when it all went bad. I was receiving email consistently from the designer about all aspects of the project. But as soon as the words invoice and account numbers and transfer came into the mix, the fraudsters were looking for those. They use bots to look for that information in emails. And they do primarily target businesses, not people like me. I don't have $1 million going in and out of my account every month like a designer might, or a contractor might, or a mortgage company might. But I think it's because she went through her iPhone, it wasn't secure enough. It got hacked, to the best of my knowledge. And at that point, the fraudsters started communicating with me as if they were the designers. The email account was only 1 letter off of what the typical email is that they send me. Their logo was there. They had actually taken the designer's communication and put it into their email from their email account. So it was her words. They even corrected her typo at one point. I found out later because I was able to look back. So it's not just about the typos. Remember all those great emails we get where you're like, oh, come on, you guys. I can tell you're not really this person because you don't even know how to spell. Well, guess what? They fixed her typo. So received the information, I sent the information via my email account to and said, we need this money, it needs to be sent there. So their idea of protecting that transaction, their idea was that they called me and they said, hey, are these the account numbers that you got in email? Yes, they were the account numbers. So they verbally said,
Wow.
in real time to me, are these the account numbers? And I looked at the email and I said, yep, those are the account numbers. What didn't happen was that a bank is required by the Uniform Business Code to actually compare the account numbers to the recipient's name, and they're required to do that. However, that was never done.
Mm.
Had that been done, they would have seen that the account numbers actually went to a gentleman in Midland, Texas, who it turns out was a money mule for 8 months, who himself was the victim of what is known as a pig butchering scam, which is a romance scam. And so that wasn't checked. They sent the money to the account of this guy in Midland, Texas. We didn't know that the money didn't get there because the fraudsters emailed and said, thanks, got it. But they were still pretending to be the designers. And I said, great, thanks. We're looking forward to having the kitchen done. Yay. All this, it's normal communication, right? So then the next communication I got was from the designer saying, hey, we need this paper from the bank validating that we get this money, that you mean to send it to us. So I, again, in contact with my wealth managers, said, hey, they need this validation, this letter. I've never heard of that. I had no idea they needed it. And they said to me, well, that's weird, but they're probably just trying to prevent fraud. Well, it was the criminal asking for the paperwork so they could get the money. Again,
Wow.
people whose expertise is in handling money never thought, hey, maybe we better check this. Okay, so 10 days went by, and the designer, the real designer, texted me and said, hey, we still haven't gotten paid. We told you we needed the money. What's up with this? And I started to look back at the emails, and I realized that there were multiple emails, some from this new email account with just a couple letters different, and some from the actual designer that had been sent to my junk mail folder. And realized, like, okay, something's hinky going on here. And I was, oh my God, you guys, I don't want to cry, but imagine walking down the street and somebody putting a gun to your head and taking $61,000. That's what happened, except without the gun. I wasn't protected by the banking company. They later, when we questioned them, said that they are not a bank because the money came out of our investments. It's a banking transaction, but they say they're not a bank. So that form of protection never happened for us. When this happened and the designer had alerted us, we alerted and asked them, oh my gosh, what can you do? So at that point, it's 10 days in, they wanted to try to see if they could investigate and claw back the money. So they had the account number. The account was drained of all money at 7 days. So at 10 days, it's gone. And I can tell you a little bit about, I would like to tell you a little bit about kind of the complexity. The person whose money, who got my money into his account, mine and my husband's, he's a money mule. He's a nobody. He's a man in Midland, Texas that was divorced 2 years prior to this happening. He met a woman somehow online, never saw her, never talked to her in person, never met her, never verified that she was human and really a girl, a woman. She threw this, again, I'm just gonna do this all the time when I talk about her, because she's not a woman. She's somebody with a script on how to trick somebody and make them fall in love with her. and give them all of the money. So this man, divorced man, sad, lonely guy, gets convinced that she needs money. He liquidates all of his assets except his house, his 401k, and all of his savings were gone. At the point at which that happened, what typically goes on is that these fraudsters that pretend they love you, they say, well, I have to figure out a way to get money. I have to have money. Like, I appreciate that you helped me, but I'm still in dire need. And in some cases, they'll say something like, I can't have any money come into my bank account because my abusive husband or my mean somebody or other will come after me, and they can't see that I have this money. So if it's okay with you, could it go into your account? And he, out of all the love in his heart, says, yes, absolutely. And in August of 2023, he began to receive money into his account. And in each case, he got a little taste, and then the money got taken through.
Mhm.
In our case, he got $11,000 of that 61. And I was told at one point that it wasn't likely that he would get prosecuted because he's a victim too. Well, you know what? He's a victim, but he victimized me. He allowed this situation to happen where my money could get taken.
Yeah.
So the good news is we've been alerted that he will be prosecuted in Midland, Texas, where he lives. And he doesn't have money. It's not about the money. It's about, I was taught there's right and wrong. And in this experience, I feel like somebody's redefining right and wrong, because the FBI won't even look at a case until it's $3 million. So if you think that reporting this crime did us any favors, the only time it did was, I live in Oro Valley. I used to live in Newcastle, Washington. That's where the house is here in Oro Valley, Arizona. Love it here. The Oro Valley Police Department listened. They investigated. They took what they learned and they handed it over to the Midland, Texas Police Department. And every step of the way, everybody said, this isn't going to go anywhere. You're not going to get justice. You're not going to get your money back. Don't expect anything. Oro Valley took the first step. Sorry, it's very upsetting. I appreciate them. And I get very sentimental when I talk about, I live in a small town and they actually cared. So when he sent it to Midland, Texas, we talked to the detective and she was like, yeah, I don't know. This probably isn't going to go anywhere. But she went and interviewed him, the guy in Midland. He told his story. She revealed to him, hey, buddy, this isn't a real woman that you've been talking to, that you've been giving your money to, that you've been helping. It's basically a syndicate of criminals that have got you. And she told us it's the only time in her 30 years that she interviewed a criminal who broke down and sobbed. I feel bad for him. His heart and his money, and now he's a criminal. So, I do want to talk about, and I'm sorry, I'm like just on and on. This has been a year of dealing with this, and it sucks. It really sucks. But I've been victimized and I refuse to be a victim. I want you guys to know what you can do so it doesn't happen to you. Kay did a great job of summarizing the things that you can do, and I just want to reiterate, don't trust the systems that you think are there to protect you. They can make mistakes. Their systems are not what they should be. Okay, so the designer insisted that her system was never hacked. I don't know what kind of investigation she did to figure that out, but she insisted, probably for liability reasons, that it wasn't her system. But they changed their payment system after this happened to us. They didn't just like send people the account information. Okay, that's one thing. If somebody sends you the account information, you verify that account information. You call and you say, I have this account information for a wire transfer. It's for so-and-so. Can you verify that is accurate? Have your bank do it. Have your investment manager do it. Verbally confirm to a legitimate published number, not a new one that you suddenly got for your bank from somewhere else, but have them verify that information. That's number one. And, I have a neighbor that's like, well, I'm just never going to do wire transfers again. You can still do them. You have to do them the right way. You have to protect yourself. And a friend of mine said, well, what would you have done differently? Well, if I thought that there were sharks in the water waiting for my money, I might have sent on that wire transfer $500. Let's just send $500 and see what happens. Guess what? I'd rather have lost 500 than 61,000. So that little annoyance that I would have asked my bank to do, that could have helped.
Good point.
So, I would love to take questions if you have them. Bruce, you got
Suzi,
anything?
thank you so much for sharing your story. This is just
Thank you.
heartbreaking. And I've seen some comments in the chat, and I can tell you that me just sitting here listening, not only is my heart breaking, I'm tearing up because this is just so emotional. And, I want people to understand and to reiterate, as you said, this can happen to anyone. These scammers are smart. They know what to do, and these are criminals. You've been the victim of a crime. It's not your fault. They're criminals. And so I so appreciate you sharing this. One of the things that we talked about before we started our session, you were sharing the information you'd learned about the people actually behind
Yes.
the guy in Midland, Texas,
Oh my
who
gosh,
was
thank
the
you.
girl. Could
Yeah.
you share a little bit about that for
Yeah,
everybody? Because I don't think people
absolutely.
understand where this comes from. And it's not
Absolutely.
just this crime, it's many types of investment crimes.
Yeah. So this has been an education for me. You think you're being careful, you think you're smart, you think you know stuff, and then the criminals are working all the time to change the game. So this guy in Midland, Texas, he had the woman that they were all in love and everything. She's not a woman, okay? She's somebody with a script someplace else in the country, someplace else in the world, who, more likely than not, is part of this crime syndicate that has enslaved him, more likely, not her. These people have been enslaved. So what happens is they get a job, they're in like Taiwan. They get a job offer for a better life in Thailand. And they're like, cool, I need this better job. I'm going. We're going to put you up. We're going to get you a good salary, blah, blah, blah. Next thing they know, they're handcuffed to a desk with a computer keyboard, and they're given instructions on how to fool people about their grandson got in an accident and they need money right away. They're trained to romance people. They've got the scripts for that. There are people trained to activate and program the bots that are looking for keywords in your emails. So they're enslaved people. Like they don't want to be bad, but they're enslaved, and they have a quota that they are supposed to meet in order to be freed. And if you're on LinkedIn at all, I will recommend highly that you take a look at what Erin West is doing. It's Erin, last name West. She's an advocate for education, anti-scam. She's been to the slave camps around the world. She's also, if you look at who else she's associated with, you can also learn even more about different scams because there's a community now that's finally growing that is trying to fight this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so be active, and pay attention to what they're saying and help your
Yeah, I would
friends
also.
understand.
Yeah, sharing. That's what I was going to mention,
Yeah.
Susie. Sharing the information is so important. That's why we so appreciate you joining us today. And besides Erin West, who I'm definitely going to look up on LinkedIn, I would encourage people to go on YouTube, on your device, on your computer, and look up Jim Browning. And Jim Browning is a gentleman that's worked with AARP for quite a while now, Bruce, I think, if I remember correctly. And
Yeah.
he is actually a computer guy. That's his 9 to 5 job. But Jim Browning is not his real name. He is also a white hat hacker that hacks into these boiler rooms in Southeast Asia that's perpetrating these kinds of crimes in India. And he turns the table on them and actually activates their cameras on their computers. So you can watch his YouTube videos of him intercepting cyber crimes and investment crimes and other issues where the fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the victim. He interrupts them and you can watch it happening at the same time. It's quite instructive. It's quite frightening, to be quite frank. And it'll give you really an idea of what Susie's talking about.
I hope the outcome is that it's not just there to shock and awe, that it's actually people are getting prosecuted, people are getting freed.
Yep. And actually, actually AARP has been, Doug Shadell, one of who is our AARP fraud expert, has been working with Jim. And he not only interrupts the crime and the fraud and tells the victim, here's what's really happening, don't do it, to stop it. But he's been working with Jim and the authorities in, say, India, and then shares information about people the authorities go in and essentially bust open the boiler room and arrest these people. So, if people have questions for Susie, I see a hand up. Hey, and this is terrific because I know these people. This is my cousin Ralph and Peggy in Arizona. Hey, Ralph. Hey,
That's
Peggy.
where the Oro Valley connection came in. Hello.
That's right. Thanks for joining us. And so, yeah, Ralph, what question do you have?
This is Peggy.
Peggy, hey, Peggy.
I did leave you a message saying hi, neighbor. But anyway,
I see that.
the other thing that you want to be careful of in all of these scams, I just learned about this a while ago, and that is when you get those unsolicited phone calls, if you answer the call or say anything to whomever's there, they can use AI to fabricate entire conversations. You don't, that's what voice messages for. If you don't recognize them, make them leave a voice message.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I might add that Peggy is an elder law attorney that specializes and has worked in many fraud cases for her clients, both here in Washington State and now in Arizona, Oro Valley. Not Oro Valley, sorry. Okay, what other questions do you have, Bruce? I can't forward on my laptop to see questions in the chat if there's other questions available.
Yeah, actually, I think one, Susie, you did a really good job of explaining, and I think people are kind of overwhelmed by the impact. So I don't see
It's
any
a lot.
questions.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say is this case also points out how we talk about people in the right circumstances can be fooled by something that they wouldn't ordinarily, like the fact that you were traveling, the fact that you were in the middle of this project, so it was kind of, it seemed reasonable. That is something that happens to a lot of people. It's kind of the right thing at the right time, can trip people up. And one thing I noticed too is that this crime has a lot of elements to it. It's got a cryptocurrency element, that the money was converted to crypto.
That's true.
And the fact that there was, another person who was involved in a romance scam who got roped into it. So this is really a perfect storm of fraud tactics, and that's why we want to educate people about these things, because maybe there was something that could have stopped it, but the thing is, it was just a cascade of things that built upon each other, to allow this crime to defraud you.
So Scott, I did see, I was looking back, Scott Fraley, hi Scott, said, wow, how is the bank not on the hook for this? So it's a great question. I just want to reiterate that we did go back to them and say, what the heck, you guys, you're supposed to protect this. And our attorney actually said, like, there's a uniform banking code that requires banks to check this information to validate that the account number goes with the person that's supposed to be receiving it. UBS said, we're not a bank. United, yeah.
Mhm.
They seem to think that because we were dealing with their investment arm, that gave them permission to pretend we're not a bank. So I will tell you that after this happened, I told them that they are never, ever to make any transfers on my account, my husband's account, without validating that information. I actually had to tell them that. And you guys, because I questioned them, because we said, you guys are at fault, they fired us
Wow.
after 30
Yeah.
years.
So
Wow.
you're not working with them anymore.
Well, we probably
Probably,
probably would have pulled back, but
Right, yeah.
they took they fired us. So
Wow.
imagine this. You get fired and then all of your money has to get transferred to another investment company. Yeah.
Mhm.
I was sweating bullets that day. I was like,
Yeah.
please don't make a mistake this time. It's all my money.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh boy.
Well, there is a question in the comments from Lisa, and she asked, "Did you ever go to the media with your story?"
So, a couple of things. The Oro Valley Explorer, you can go to tucsonmedia.com, or you can I think you can Google my name and you'll find it.
Mhm.
I love my small town. They did a story about it, which is the story that I actually posted to my Facebook friends, and that's where Bruce saw it. Let's see, who else? The other AARP National Fraud Show is going to be talking to us. When we had no idea, we were broken and sad and didn't know what to do, who to turn to. Nobody was helping us. I did go on the Kim Commando show. I've been on her show twice. And if you don't know Kim Commando, look her up. It's Commando with a K. She's really good at revealing fraud and she just talks tech stuff, but because fraud now is a tech thing, she
Mhm.
covers that now as well. But that's, that's it. I mean, I want to do as much as I can to educate people directly, to so
Yeah, I found the
thank you,
link to the
Jana.
story in the Tucson media. And also, yeah, as you mentioned, I think our national podcast, The Perfect Scam,
Yeah.
is going to be featuring your story as well. Um, and so yeah, and it sounds like there's a lot of there's a lot of people who can relate to your story, and
Yes.
and appreciate you sharing it.
Mhm.
Um,
Thanks for having me. And I love the Zoom call because I can see all your beautiful faces.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and you know, something I'd like to share that I always try to reiterate to folks when I speak to groups in person and do webinars and stuff, but I always want to uh, for all of us, you know, we're so moved by Suzi's story. It's just heartbreaking. I saw the reactions in the chat, and I had the same reactions. And so we're very sympathetic, and rightfully so, because she's been, as I said, the victim of a crime. These are criminals. But one of the things that AARP really wants us all, everyone, to focus on, and it's really an education point, is victim shaming. And Suzi, I know you even, you know, had said you had these thoughts about yourself, this guilt, this, how could I have done this? But we really need to look at these frauds, look at these crimes with a different mindset, a different eye. If somebody hit you over the head and stole your purse, oh, it'd be so terrible. How could that happen? Oh, I hope they get these guys. Somebody's the victim of a fraud, especially a financial fraud. It's like, oh, how could that person be so silly to allow that to happen?
Yes.
That's not the way to look at fraud, and especially financial fraud crimes. We need to, same thing, empathy. What can we do to help? I'm so sorry this has happened. It's not their fault. The gentleman in Midland, Texas, Suzi, you were so empathetic to him, you know, even though I'd be so furious. I can't begin to
Oh,
tell you.
I'm mad.
Yeah.
I'm mad.
But you were so empathetic, and because he's also the victim of a crime. And so that's the mindset that we really need to keep in mind as we think about and remember. And I hope that share Suzi's story with our friends and family to educate them as well.
Can I say one thing? I know that we're, you know, it's AARP. Like you get your letter as soon as you turn 55, right? And it's like, ah, I'm an old person now, right? Everybody loves that moment in their lives, right? Just because it's AARP, paying attention, I'm 66, my husband's 72. It, the main reason this is a quote, old people's crime is because we have the wealth. We worked our whole lives to save this money so that we could be in retirement. So we are a target primarily because we have the wealth. It's not because we're stupid. It's not because we're lonely. I mean, maybe in some cases it could be. But the bottom line is this has been called the greatest transfer of wealth out of the United States that has ever happened. And the reason is we're targeted because we have the resources. I didn't mean for it to all go out in 61,000 to somebody I don't know and a bunch of criminals. I meant it to be taking care of me into my old age.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely true.
I think there are stats that younger people are more often taken advantage of, but
They are
they
getting taken
don't have
advantage of.
life savings to lose.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
well, I did just want to point out that I put the number for the ARP fraud helpline in the chat. If you're in the middle of something, we have ARP trained volunteers who can assist you, and that's a toll-free service, and they can be very helpful. So you know that's a resource that ARP provides. And yeah, I think we're not going to get a lot of questions because I think we're all too kind of a little invested now. But is there anything that you would say to people as in closing, Susie? Any message you want to leave people with?
Oh, man, take care of yourself.
Mhm.
Nobody's there to help you.
Mm.
Nobody's there to help you. Like,
Mhm.
take care of yourself. Don't think,
Mhm.
well, these are the professionals. They know,
Mhm.
Yeah.
they might know a certain amount, but they, even if they're doing 30 wire transfers a day, you might slip through the cracks. You might not be protected. So do everything to protect yourself. And
Yep.
yes, freeze your credit. And by the way, when some random number calls you, or if they text you, report junk. Report junk.
Yep.
Don't
Yeah.
Yep.
don't respond. Don't,
Don't
please.
respond. Yep.
Please. And that's not
Yep.
how ours happened, but I did see a lot of comments about,
Mhm.
what to do with
Mhm.
that, and report junk.
Mhm.
Don't
Yep.
even answer them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one thing that I
Oh
want
my
to
God, Lisa, yes, Lisa. Be the
yes,
squeaky wheel. Don't be a victim.
be a squeaky wheel. Absolutely. And one thing that I wanted to let folks know as well is you mentioned that, and in your article on this, Susie, that this money was converted into cryptocurrency.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many people I've had tell me when I speak with groups, I could never be scammed with cryptocurrency because I don't even know what it is. Well, there's a lot of ways that crypto comes into play, especially now, in some cases, even more than gift cards with fraud. On our next Fraud Watch Friday, we're going to be doing a Crypto 101 session. I'm going to briefly talk about what is crypto. It's not going to be high tech. It's not gonna, you're just not gonna be confused. Very basic. What is it? How is it used in scams? What are the top scams? Perhaps what are the top 3 scams that use crypto? And then the AARP Washington Advocacy Director, Kathy McCall, is going to join us to talk about crypto ATMs. And if you haven't looked at the ATM in your local stores recently, take a look because most of them do crypto now. They're everywhere. And so most of them are unregulated. It's part of the legislative policy AARP Washington is proposing for the legislature in Olympia to help regulate these to protect people on these crypto ATMs. And so again, if you want to learn about crypto and fraud, basic, again, not super high tech, but enough to kind of make you aware of what to look for in terms of scams. Because as you said, Susie, first thing that happened once the scammers overseas got the money, crypto, untraceable,
Yep.
absolutely untraceable, whether it's overseas or whether it's here in the US, doesn't matter. Can't find
By
it.
the way, because the money came out of our retirement, we have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, and I know you guys did
Yeah,
a
that's
session a couple times ago, so I definitely encourage people to go back in and take a look at that session. Yeah, we're guess what? We get to pay taxes on money that somebody else got to enjoy.
yeah, that's adding sort of more insult to injury.
No
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. That and the designer telling us that they would come after us for breach of contract and non-payment after they found out that we got robbed.
Oh, geez. So you're
Wow.
just kind of victimized again.
Hey, kick me while I'm down. I'll get back up.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Susie, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Kay, for
very much.
Thank you.
your work. We really appreciate you. Our next session will be February 21st, and as Kay said, it'll be on crypto. We'll dive into that world. And in the chat there is the link to register. If you'd like to go register now, then you'll be signed up, and you'll get a reminder email next month. But that'll be a very interesting session, I think. So
Yep.
thank you to everyone. We appreciate you being part of the fight against fraud, and hope to see you next month.
Yep, and you'll be getting in your email a link to 2 separate documents going to tell you all of the more detail than you want to know about title fraud and wire transfer fraud. So look for that as well. Thank you
All
for
right.
joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.